Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. Let me start with some macro thoughts in my article over the weekend. The Tsar, which is the Rand, gets caught in the crossfire, I wrote. Robert Swan Mueller III, the special counsel and President Trump's nemesis, has been flipping all of President Trump's henchmen and even some of his hatchet men. And his latest flip is Alan Weisselberg, the Trump Organization's chief financial officer. The bookkeeper is a keeper of secrets, and you will recall it was the bookkeeper who eventually sank Al Capone. Weisselberg has been given an immunity deal. This follows hot on the heels of the news that Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, had turned on his former boss after a conversation with his father in which the elder Cohen told his son that he did not survive the Holocaust to have his name tarnished by the US president. Whilst I remain of the view that Trump is a political Harry Houdini, born Eric Weiss, later Eric Weiss or Harry Weiss, Houdini was a Hungarian-born American illusionist and stunt performer, noted for his sensational escape acts. Things are indeed thick. President Trump, under some mind-bending pressure, self-evidently said, "I know all about flipping. For 30 or 40 years I've been watching flippers." Explained in an interview with Fox News, Trump lashed out again and again at those he described as rats. President Trump is a linguistic warfare specialist. Who can forget the names he gave his opponents? Crooked Hillary, Lying Ted, Little Marco, Low Energy Jeb were all devastating and terminal, but his linguistics increasingly resemble a hoodlum or a mafia boss. Anyway, this is the domestic US backdrop. I have asked Secretary of State Pompeo to closely study the South Africa land and farm seizures and expropriations and large-scale killing of farmers, tweeted Trump. Senator Corker characterized Trump's South Africa tweet as a base simulator. Well, there are portions of those who support the president that are, I'm sure, that generates excitement. I mean, it's, you know what I'm saying. President Trump evidently studied the U.S. Army War College Quarterly of 1997. The U.S. officer assigned to the Deputy Chief of Staff, charged with defining the future of warfare, wrote, "One of the defining bifurcations of the future will be the conflict between information masters and information victims. This information warfare will not be couched in the rationale of geopolitics the author suggests, but will be spawned like any Hollywood drama out of raw emotions, hatred, jealousy, and greed. Emotions rather than strategy will set the terms of information warfare struggles." 47 farmers were killed in 2017 to 2018, according to statistics from Agri-SA. However, the same figures show that farm murders are at a 20-year low. My point is we exist in a post-factual world, and President Trump is the contemporary politician who has understood this intuitively, if at times viscerally. The Rand dropped more than 1.5% against the dollar in early trade on Thursday before recovering a little. The Rand has been a roller coaster, rallying 20.689% Q4 2017 through April 2018 this year, as everyone imbibed the Ramaphoria Kool-Aid, but now has reversed all its gains and since April has slumped 23.478%. If this goes fully fledged, and it might well because it plays like sweet music to President Trump's base, then I think the rand is at risk of a precipitous asymmetric downside move as far as 17 to the dollar. Traders might consider buying 1-year maturity, one-touch puts on the rand with a 17 strike. I wrote on 13th of August, President Trump seems to be relishing his financial warfare strategies. He has Khamenei on the run, Maduro in Venezuela is being attacked by remote-controlled drone, Xi suddenly looks ever so fragile. Of course, he has given President Erdogan a fearful hiding as well. I reckon Trump has Cyril and Julius for breakfast, and Julius's natural bent is to escalate. Julius Malemo, who's led calls, of course, for the seizure of white-owned land, told Trump to keep out of the debate. We want to send a strong message to the US to stay out of South Africa. You have caused enough problems in Africa, he told journalists. President Ramaphosa's spokeswoman said Trump was misinformed. Ramaphosa had announced on August 1 that the ruling African National Congress plans to change the constitution to allow the expropriation of land without compensation. Steve Hofmeyr, a South African musician who is a foremost crusader for white right-wing causes, is speaking of a white genocide in South Africa. Data from the International Institute of Finance, an authority on global portfolio flows, this week showed $800 million bled out of South African bonds from the start of the month up to August 17, more than any other emerging market, including Turkey. Between January and June, foreign investors sold $2.5 billion worth of South African bonds, the highest sell-off on record. Jacob Zuma used to regale friends with a rendition of Bring Me My Machine Gun. President Trump, the linguistic and financial warfare specialist, has the machine gun, and the rand is in its line of fire. This is a long-term chart of the dollar versus the rand. We're last at 14.2898. I'm talking about options with the strike at 17. Home thoughts. Sometimes in deep field I come across images so powerful that they leave me speechless. Like this South Sudanese refugee child who just finished drawing a pair of slippers on the ground. This is Westlands in Nairobi in the early 1990s. It's not too long ago, in point of fact, and you can see there's the shopping mall called the Mall, which is still there. Our world needs a revolution of love. Let that revolution begin with you and your families, said the Pope. Political reflections. Donald Trump will welcome Kenya's Uhuru Kenyatta to the White House on Monday. This is the first Donald Trump will welcome Uhuru Kenyatta to the White House on Monday for what will be only the second one-on-one meeting the US president has held with an African leader since he took office last year. The first meeting with Nigeria's ailing 75-year-old Muhammadu Buhari in April ended with the US president telling aides he never wanted to meet someone so lifeless again, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. Trump likes chemistry, said a person in touch with both senior US administration officials and the Kenya delegation preparing for Monday's meeting. Africa has never been higher on his radar, but if the big guy likes you, he'll find a way to make those things work. After his meeting with Mr. Trump, Mr. Kenyatta will meet Theresa May in Nairobi next week before flying to Beijing in early September for the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit to be presided over by Xi Jinping. I think there is a wide open opportunity for President Kenyatta to present himself as the African interlocutor with respect to Africa and the White House. FT, Donald Trump's circus act, is a sinister distraction. The circus act children love the most is the one that is meant to distract them. When the clown comes out, the kids have eyes for nothing else. Little do they notice the scenery changes in the background. Elephants may be replaced by trapeze artists, flame eaters supplant the lions, but the children stay riveted on the clown in the spotlight. Donald Trump is the circus maestro of our age. Indeed he is. Saudi Aramco flop, beginning of the end for Crown Prince MBS's new Saudi Arabia, asks Haaretz.com. The old guard at Aramco and in the government didn't want to disclose as much information about the secretive company as the New York and London exchanges were insisting on. MBS reportedly was fixed on the prestige of a $2 trillion valuation rather than thinking about cold calculations of the market. What's become evident is that Vision 2030 is not the daring and transformative process that MBS and the glitzy marketing campaigns surrounding it have promised. Like beauty, it's skin deep. MBS is correct in seeing the need to get Saudi Arabia off its oil fix, but his vision of an economy of innovative, educated Saudis and the dynastic rule of the Al Saud family are a complete mismatch. MBS has shown not the slightest inkling of ceding any royal prerogatives, least of all his own, of absolute rule. Indeed, tolerance of dissent has diminished, as evidenced by the arrest of female activists and the threat of imposing the death sentence on one. As I said in November last year, the paranoia in the palaces in Saudi Arabia is real and it's existential. In all the history books I've read, it's probably wisest to operate on one front, not two, and certainly not three. The desperate impulse to act is also up against a 4-year deadline. The speed of decline in FX reserves produces a 48-month shelf life. I said in November last year, this is an unprecedented moment in the history of the kingdom and the most perilous moment for the House of Saud that I can recall. Javad Zarif, the Iranian foreign minister, says the US is waging psychological war against Iran. As I said before, President Trump seems to be relishing his financial warfare strategies. Here's Khamenei on the run, Maduro in Venezuela is being attacked by remote-controlled drones, Z looks ever so fragile. Amazingly short statement of Deputy Commerce Minister Wang Shaowen's trip to the US, constructive, frank, and keep in touch for the next step. Empire of debt, China colonizing small countries by lending them massive amounts of money they can never repay in bid for world domination, says the Sun. Talking about Sri Lanka handing over the port, Djibouti is likely to cede control of a port terminal, and then Rex Tillerson said Beijing encouraged dependency using opaque contracts, predatory loan practices, and corrupt deals that mire nations in debt and undercut their sovereignty. And I said in June this year, the first overarching point is that creditors are not Santa Claus and miscues will exact a very heavy price. Countries will be hand-toted. Let's move on to international markets, how the S&P 500 index became a technology index in one chart. That's via Stephen Foley. The S&P 500 rose to an all-time high following the Fed chair's remarks at Jackson Hole, led to a flattening of the 10-year yield spread to less than 20 basis points. Powell supported gradual pace of rate increases while stating he doesn't see signs of elevated risk of overheating from an inflation standpoint. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 116.16, dollar index 95.22, Japanese yen 111.17, Swiss franc 0.9839, the pound 128.41, the Australian dollar 0.7313, India rupee just at 70 the figure, South Korean won 11.1429, the rial 4.1065, Egyptian pound 17.9012 and the rand 14.2895. Dollar index, my chart remains 100, my stop just below 94. Euro dollar, last trading at 116.14, feels as if it wants to push a little bit higher. Let's keep an eye out on that. SunTrust has upgraded Netflix, says buy on the dip because of the India opportunity. June 18, I was saying I reckon Netflix goes to Africa and India next, and they have another 500 million customers paying $10 a month in the blink of an eye. That's the mass market right there, I said. July 18, I said Netflix is my second recommended trade of the year after Twitter. And I was saying the market is the international one and Netflix is only just getting started. Total current market cap of cryptocurrencies, $205.2 billion. Bitcoin dominance is 56.4%. 22 tokens have a market cap of over $500 million. So back to the stock, it trades at 100 times fake 2024 earnings. There is a fake buyout, a real SEC investigation, and numerous competitive threats. Tesla. Let's move on. Gold lost at 1204.20. Came back to that 1200 level. It's popped above it. I think it'll go back down again. Crude oil, $68.34. That's had a strong rebound over the last few sessions. Silver is headed for its longest consecutive run of weekly decline since at least 1950. Tina Davis. Emerging markets' fate is tied to the dollar. This is Morgan Stanley via Chi Girl. She's indeed right. Turkish lira year to date, it's down about 37%. Burundi considers buying Russian-made Pantsir S-1 air defense missile systems. Who they're defending themselves against is another matter. Zimbabwe's president takes his oath as US censure hangs over the vote. I exhort us to commit ourselves collectively to develop our motherland. What unites us is greater than what could ever divide us, he said. Reaffirmed pre-election pledges to revive Zimbabwe's crippled economy and settle outstanding debts with foreign lenders. Now is the time for all of us to unite as a nation and grow our economy. In this video, Emerson Mnangagwa is seen greeting African leaders who attended his inauguration. David Coulthard tweeted, "Today is Sunday, it feels like Sunday, it looks like Sunday, the calendar says it's Sunday, but in the absence of any primary evidence proving that it is Sunday, it cannot possibly be Sunday, so I'll just treat it like any other day today." Controversial businessperson Zunaid Motti has been denied in Germany. In a statement released on Saturday night, attorney Ulrich Rue confirmed that Motti was detained when he tried to depart Munich this week. The detention is in relation to an Interpol red notice which was issued against Motti for the alleged theft of a rare 500 million pink diamond linked to a Russian businessman in Lebanon. The Motti Group's operations in Zimbabwe have drawn intense media scrutiny, but Motti has won over key allies in recent months, including Lord Peter Hain in the UK. South African oil shares down 1.19% this year. Egyptian pound back at that 17.9038 level. Nigeria's economic recovery slowed in the second quarter. GDP growth came in at 1.5% year-on-year, lower than the 2% achieved in quarter one. Nigerian oil shares down 7.37% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index up 10.98% this year. Look at this, Zambia Eurobond yields are starting to move off the charts. Thank you to Mark Boland for that chart. And I spoke about this with Ranat Gopaldas when I said there's a chance of a big ticket blow up in any African country will be the catalyst, and I said Zambia looks like a likely candidate. The IMF, there are no discussions on a possible fund-supported program given that the authorities' borrowings plans compromise the country's debt sustainability and undermine its macroeconomic stability. I like this photograph of Liwonde National Park taken by Frank Weitzer, courtesy African Parks, via the Smithsonian Bank. As I said, the Kenyan president is to meet with Trump on security and trade. Uhuru Kenyatta is the second African leader to meet with Trump at the White House. Nigeria's president visited earlier this year. Meeting with Trump will help Kenyatta's image after a crisis in which the Supreme Court overturned the August presidential election, citing irregularities, and the opposition boycotted the fresh vote said political commentator John Githongo. Kenyatta then hosts British Prime Minister Theresa May on Thursday, and then he's off to China to visit Xi Jinping. Look at this photograph of President Kenyatta going to the airport, and Alan Kimanthi tweeted, "Is the lady keeping far away from the goons?" Yields on both the 10 and 30-year Eurobonds declined by 0.1%, 10 basis to 7.7 and 8.6% last week. Seiton expects inflation to experience upward pressure because of the rise in fuel and transport prices, with the introduction of a 16% VAT on petroleum products as from September 2018. The Nairobi Securities Exchange is trading at a price-to-earnings ratio of 13.8 and a dividend yield of 3.9%. Private sector credit growth touched a high of 25.8% in June 2014, dropped to 2% after the capping of interest rates, has risen to 4.3% in June 2018. The Kenya shilling is the second best performing currency in the world in 2018. It's up by 2.4% year to date, and really this is being driven by improving diaspora remittances, which increased by 71.9% in June 2018 versus June 2017. Nairobi All Shares up 1.04%, NSE 20 is down 11.2%. I did an interview with Citizen last night with Jeff Koinange and Victoria Rubidiri, and one of the things I was saying is we need a radical approach. We need to be looking at cutting taxes, stimulating people to do more business, and in turn getting more money on the revenue side. Once again, thank you kindly for stopping by.